Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and it's Friday, so I've got some hot takes for you. These are going to be some games that I played, looks like mostly over the last couple of weeks here, and they're ones that I've played maybe once or twice. I just don't have enough experience with them to give you a full review yet. But there's going to be games that just don't make it back to my table because of the first play experience. So I still want to let you know what I think about these games and give you an idea if maybe they're right for you, even though they may be wrong for me. But there are some games that are definitely going to be some highlights here, so stay tuned and let's see if you find anything you might like. First up, I'm going to kick things off with the Search for Lost Species. Now, Search for Lost Species is a follow-up game to the Search for Planet X. Search for Planet X is a game that I absolutely love. I really like deduction in board games. It's one of those things where it scratches that itch for me. That puzzle is just really, really fun for me to try to solve. So Search for Planet X, you have kind of the solar system that you're looking at, and your observatory can only see a certain section of the sky at a time. So you're doing these scans across the sky to trying to find different celestial objects like asteroids or gas planets or whatnot. And then essentially you're just trying to determine where those are, find out where space is empty, and then eventually try to figure out where Planet X is. And this game comes with a series of rules. It'll tell you like, the asteroids has to be within, I don't know, like 8 segments of each other or something like that. And maybe gas giants can't be next to, or have to be next to an empty space or something like that. So it's gonna give you some logic rules that you have to apply to these surveys that you're doing. And the goal is to try to deduce where Planet X is with the fewest possible actions, or the fewest time as you possibly can, because each action is going to have a different amount of time associated with it. So doing narrow surveys takes you more time than doing large surveys, and managing that time with other players is super important to the game. And then also, you don't necessarily win if you find Planet X. So you can actually do things where you publish journal articles and say like, I found an asteroid over here, I found a comet over here. And if you manage to publish those before other people and you get them right, then that can be a way to get points in the game and a possibility for winning the game. So I really like that the game, while it is a deduction game, kind of going for that Search for Planet X, it gives you these other avenues to go down to score points and possibly find the victory, even if you don't make it to that kind of final conclusion. And this is a very, very similar structure for the Search for Lost Species. It is essentially, I would say, same game, but they kind of changed up the formula a little bit by making it so you have these explorers on this hex grid board, and you can still do things where you're basically doing surveys, but you have 2 different surveys where you can do one by boat and go around the perimeter of the island, or you can do one by foot and kind of cross through the interior of the island. But you're still kind of searching for these various animals, and each one of these animals has a different logic rule associated with it. Like the lories have to be in like a diamond configuration. They're a bird in the game. And there's something like the python cannot be next to a couscous. So there's just different logic puzzles. As you find things in different hexes, you can kind of figure out where other things are supposed to be or have to be on the map due to those logic rules. What's kind of cool with the Search for Lost Species is that it adds in the lost species, which there's going to be a number of them in the game, and you can actually have a bit of variability on the rule for the lost species. So where Search is for Planet X, it had Planet X, and it had just one rule associated with it. With the lost species, you do get some variation in the game with having that lost species, which can have different rules associated with it depending on which lost species you're going for. I think this is a really nice feature of this game. But I would say everything else, it feels like it kind of took away from the core of the game. Now, I wanted to play the Search for Lost Species, but I like to see how designers iterate on a system. I feel like sometimes they refine things and make things a lot better. Sometimes it's just more of the same, and it's nice to have that variability. With the Search for Lost Species, I think they kind of went the wrong direction, and they kind of added more things that added a little more overhead and took away from that kind of core deduction puzzle. So you could do things like visit a village, and visiting a village was how you did these research actions, which gave you more logic rules. There's a similar function in Search for Planet X, but it also allowed you to get these, I guess, village cards. And these cards had different abilities on them. They would give you maybe an instant or some sort of ongoing ability, or maybe an end game bonus for the game. So the ongoing abilities might be something like reducing the cost for taking certain actions in certain spaces. They're not, I don't think any of them are game breaking. It just kind of, like I said, it took away from the focus of the deduction puzzle. Because there are some end game scoring cards where it's like, well, if you find, for each lure you find, which is a bird, and that's the one that has to be in the diamond pattern, for each one you find at the end of the game, you gain like +1 point. So that could be a +4 point swing if you find all 4 lures on the map. Which is a pretty big point swing, because I think finding the lost species itself is only worth 12, which it's a big chunk of points, but due to finding all those other species on the map, it's not as much as you would probably hope. So I really do feel like this just felt like a less refined version of Search for Planet X, which is interesting for the second in the series, because I just felt like Search for Planet X is a little cleaner, a little easier to teach, and the logic rules are a little easier for newer players to grasp. And for me, Lost Species didn't really add enough for me to say like, oh, this is one I'm going to keep and kind of revisit. I think I'm going to give it a couple tries solo, because I really do like deduction puzzles, but it's one that I think if I'm playing with a group, I think I almost would rather take out Search for Planet X. So that's my conclusion there on Search for Lost Species. We may hear more about it in the future as I play it solo a few times, but I don't see it staying in my collection long term, because yeah, Planet X is just, it's great. Okay, so on to my second game here, and this is going to be Abyss. So first call out, I gotta say I got a insanely good deal on Abyss. I went to a game swap, a local game swap where people sell generally used games, but there was someone at this game swap that apparently was just trying to offload games, and he had Abyss with an expansion for $5, and this was insane to me. Like I was blown away that I managed to pick up this game with an expansion for $5, because I was kind of thinking about buying it, and then I was like, oh, for $5, duh, I'm gonna buy it. So that being said, this could skew my opinion of the game a little bit, but overall, I would say Abyss is it's a good game. I had a good time with Abyss. I do like that it kind of has that player interaction. So with Abyss, it's kind of like a neat little set collection thing. And on a player's turn, they have a few different options, but the main option is to kind of recruit other tribes. And to recruit these tribe members, you're gonna flip a card from the deck, and before you can recruit it though, you have to offer it for auction for the other players. So you would offer it to the player right after you in clockwise order, and then essentially they get the option to buy it for this 1 pearl token. Now, if they don't buy it, the next player is to offer, then the next player, and then finally it goes back to you. If you don't take that one, then you flip another one, and then you kind of do it all over again. Now, if anyone buys it, then they get that card, they pay you a pearl, so it has a slight closed economy. There's ways to bring more pearls in the economy, but that little auction part of it is a closed economy system where players are paying each other. But then if anyone buys one of them, now the second card that gets bought is bought for 2 pearls. Then if the third player wants to buy it, it has to be 3 pearls. So the cards get more and more expensive. And it has this neat push your luck mechanic with it, because these cards, they have kind of these power values associated with them. Like they're 1 to 4. Getting a 4, that's really good, because you want to have these higher power cards, because those help you pay for these kind of lords or whatever, lords of the deep of some sort. And having higher power cards just make it easier to purchase these lords. And also there's some other ways that those higher power cards will end up contributing to your final score if you manage to play your hand right. So you're trying to kind of push your luck and see if you can get those higher ones. So when you see a 2, where it's like, is that worth 1 pearl? Maybe. Depends on if it's the right tribe or not. And then when someone sees a 3, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to pass that up. I don't think I need it, but I don't know if I want to let anyone else have it. So a 3 for 1 pearl, that sounds pretty good. Now, if anyone sees a 4 on their first bid or whatever, that first auction one, they're like, oh yeah, I'll give a 1 pearl for a 4. Like I'm not gonna let anyone have that 4. But it is kind of like when that 3 comes up and they buy it for 1 pearl, and then that next card flips and it's a 4, and they're like, son of a gun. like it's just that upsetting moment where it's like I could have waited and got that one for like 1 pearl or something. Now the next person gets it for 2 pearls. So it kind of has this neat push your luck system with this kind of interesting little closed economy during that phase. And then essentially when you flip those cards over, as soon as the active player recruits a card, any cards that you didn't recruit are going to go face down into kind of like these pools of cards. And then another option players have on their turn, they can just take one of those pools. So that's kind of interesting because those pools are going to tend to have a lot of low cards in them, but it's a way to kind of boost your hand size and then buy those lords. And then it has some kind of standard stuff where like buying those lords will generally give you some sort of benefit, ongoing benefit. There's some that'll give you, there'll be disadvantages for other players. And I actually really like this because it wasn't really like a take that. It wasn't like you bought this card and you attack this player. It was kind of like you bought this card and then you put all the other players at a disadvantage. Like there was one that one person bought, it was a card that reduced all other players' hand size to 6, which was just devastating for the rest of the table. Is like you're trying to collect all these cards to be able to purchase these super expensive like ward cards down on the bottom, and when you reduce that hand size of 6 and most of your cards are 1s, it's like, okay, I have 6 value of cards and that person costs 10, so this is going to be a challenge. So it had kind of these neat things where those cards all modified the rules in a little bit of a way. And then finally is the locations. So there's the symbols on these cards where you have these keys, and as soon as you gain 3 keys through various methods, there's 2 different ways to kind of get keys, but as soon as you have 3, you have to take a location. When you take a location, you have to assign the people that you use to pay for that location with those keys to that location. Then those abilities are kind of canceled for the rest of the game. You can't use those anymore because they are now assigned to that one location. And this created some tension with deciding on like, okay, well, if I buy this person, I'm gonna get my 3rd key, which means I need a location, which means I'm gonna cancel out these effects. So do I wanna buy that person with a key, or do I wanna buy this other person with no keys on them so I don't have to lose my effects yet? So this created kind of a neat little pacing and tension system in this game. Now, the only real downside I had with Abyss was that end timing. So I find that some older games have this race mechanic where you don't get to kind of pursue your maximum amount of points. Like it doesn't have a fixed number of rounds. It's going to continue until someone triggers that end condition. And sometimes when I play this type of game, I would say that end condition can come a little too early for certain players. Like sometimes people have a plan in mind and then someone will trigger the end of the game. They're like, I needed 2 more turns, not 1 more turn, so now I'm screwed. Which definitely happened to me because like with the player that triggered the end, I needed probably 2 or 3 more turns to kind of pull off my point combo I was working towards, and I just got devastated at the end of the game. So there was another player in the game that kind of got wiped out with me with that action. So this is just one of those things in some of these, I would say older style games that can be a frustrating experience at the end. Like you can have fun all the way through the game and then it's all of a sudden like, oh, the game's ending in the next turn, by the way. And everyone's like, what? Like so it almost felt a little too short in that way. Now, overall, though, I did really enjoy Abyss. I want to play Abyss again. It is a interesting game. It was pretty easy to teach, and I think it's really easy to table. So I really enjoyed my first play of Abyss, and I want to bring that back out to the table. All right. Next up is this one I consider kind of the winner of my hot takes review, and this is going to be King of 12. Now, this is an older game that I heard about. You know, I've been mentioning Brothers Murph a lot. I feel like I need to mention some of the other podcasts and YouTube channels I listen to. But Brothers Murph, they bring up some kind of interesting games I never heard about. So King of 12 is one that I heard about from them, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. I'd like to try to pick that up one day. Never happened, but then one of my other friends in my game group just happened to bring it in one day. He was like, oh, I got this. I was like, I've been wanting to play that for ages. And played it. I had a great time with it. I thought this was really good, and I said, okay, I'm gonna look out for this when it goes on sale. Finally went on sale, finally picked up a copy and got it played last week. I was super happy I did pick this game up because I had a blast with this game. So that first play, I don't remember a ton about. I just remember enjoying it. Now this play in the last week, I learned the rules and have a bit more memory of what happened during this. And overall, I think this is just a phenomenal structure for a game. So players they have a die, they roll it at the beginning of the round, and then essentially you're just trying to win the round, generally with the highest die value. So you may say like, oh, well, everyone just rolled a die and they're comparing the high die values. Like that sounds kind of boring. But everyone has a hand of cards. Now, this is a bit of a hand management game and everyone has the exact same cards. I think it's 7 cards or so. And each one of those cards has an ability. One of those abilities is like re-roll your die, or another one is like add 7 to the value of your die. So it doesn't cause you to re-roll, it just says like, okay, if you have a 2, now your die value is a 9 instead. So when you compare values, you have a 9 now. There's another one that's like the Golem, which says like your die value is considered a 12 for this round, unless it is 12 and then it's considered 1. And then the interesting card is I think the Knight, where it says the lowest die value wins this round instead of the highest. So the cards will have different abilities with them to allow you to modify that die value to try to come out on top during the round. But the crux of the game is that all ties are canceling. So if anyone plays the same card as another player, those cards, they cancel. They just do nothing. If all 3 players play the same card or all 4 players play the same card, those cards do nothing. They all cancel. If any player has the same die value during the round, they cancel. And then during each one of these turns, like when a player wins, they're gonna gain 2 points, the player in second gains 1 point, and then at the end of the round, you're gonna compare your points. If anyone has the same value of points, they cancel and they get wiped out. So it's possible that the people tied for first could just cancel out and that player that has third or even fourth wins the round because of this. So, and winning the round is where you're actually going to take one of those cards in your hand, you're going to take it, place it face down in your die, and you no longer have access to that card for future rounds. And the winner of the game just needs to get 2 points. So basically, once someone has 2 points, they win the game. So those points you're gathering during the round aren't even the victory points. They're just literally to say whether or not you won the round, and you have to discard one of your cards. And even that choice of which one to lose, like which card you take out, is kind of critical because you know that is one card that you're not going to have for the other players. And just everything about this, it is fun. It's just a great time at the table, trying to figure out whether people are going to play. So like sometimes there's one card was the Parasite, which gives you -7 to your die value. So sometimes you're trying to figure out, ooh, is that person going to play the Knight and make it so the lowest die wins? Do I want to play my Parasite? Or maybe you have a high die value and you know someone has the Knight out there. So maybe you play your Knight at the same time, hoping that someone else plays, or planning that someone else plays the Knight, so you can kind of cancel their cards so the Knight no longer is in play. And it's kind of cool because if you can kind of keep track of other people played, but you're going to play, I think, 6 or so rounds in the first one, and keeping track of which cards have been played yet is kind of hard. So you're trying to suss out what players' goals are based on the die value on the table. So I have an absolute blast with King of 12. I really am excited to get this back to the table. I think this is going to be a great little filler game, and just highly recommend King of 12 so I've only had 2 plays of it, but I think it's going to hold up for a while because it was a lot of fun. All right, next up, we got the big game of the week. This was Evacuation. So Evacuation, this is a heavy game. I think it comes in around a 4.0 on the weight scale for BGG. The theme of this game is that the old world that you currently have colonized is dying, and you need to move all your population production to the new world. So the new world has thriving and has plant life, whereas the old world just has desert and nothingness. So your goal is over the, I think, 4 rounds in the game to slowly move, or well, I guess very quickly move your production and population over to this new world to be able to have a thriving civilization. This is an interesting game because unlike a lot of Euros, this one starts you with the old world having a lot of production. So you have actually 2 different resource pools with the old and new world. And whereas a lot of Euro games, maybe you're building up to having good production, you're building up to trying to get a lot of resources. This one just dumps you in with saying, oh, here's a lot of resources for you with the old world, and figure out how to manage them. So it's kind of like you got dumped in midway to a Euro game, and now you're figuring out how to move everything over to a different location. This is kind of a neat concept. I thought overall the theme and just the structure of the game was really well done. I think the puzzle of the game was really well done. Now I will say there are a couple different modes in the game. There's this race mode, which the person that taught the game to me said that this got a little bit of flack online. Some people didn't really like the game because of it. So we played the points mode, which was essentially playing the full game, like playing the full 4 rounds and just seeing, doing our point calculation, then whoever got the most points won the game. So we did play kind of that, I guess, not beginner mode. We played the slightly more advanced / standard mode of the game. And this was good. I would say this is a good game if you are really into kind of those calculating crunchy games. So for every round of this game, it was kind of like, okay, your energy determines how many actions you can take, and you also need energy to build spaceships, and those spaceships need, or well, to send your spaceships from the old to the new world. Those spaceships are one way to get goods over to that new world, so you want to make sure you have enough energy to do enough actions but you also want to have enough energy to kind of build your spaceships. So you're constantly doing this kind of calculation on saying, okay, how many actions can I take this round? Okay, with those actions, how many resources do I have to spend? Can I get these ships over here? There's usually 3 different things that you can buy at a time for each type of category that's out there. So you're trying to look and say, okay, I could buy this spaceship. That's my number 1 preference. And then if someone buys that one, maybe I'll take this spaceship over here. That's my number 2 preference. So you're trying to kind of calculate out how much you can do for a round and trying to mitigate any possible blocking by other players. So it is kind of the Euro resource management. So there's really not a lot of direct player interaction, but there is the race to get to places. Like there's the race for the locations on the new world, because it's a hex space grid on the new world, and there's different benefits in the different hex spaces. So it's a race to kind of figure out, or to get to those locations that are maybe considered more valuable, or the ones that you need. It's a race to get the ships that you need, because there's only 3 out, and when someone buys one, a new one's revealed, but maybe that was the one that you needed for what you were trying to accomplish. Because ships can carry different, I would say, resources on them. So they can't all carry the exact same thing. And overall, yeah, this was a good puzzle, especially with the action system. I really like kind of the action mechanism in the game, because you had these cards. We played, I guess this was another variant. There were a few variants in this box. So this is a variant where we had, I think, the advanced action cards, and we could either play the card for the action, or you played it face down for one of your base actions. And all of the actions were really simple in the game. I don't feel like anything was too complicated to grasp. It wasn't one of these games where you're kind of building up your chains of actions. Like I feel like let's say Lacerda. Lacerda has games where you might be doing one action, but that one action is going to trigger you to do like 4 or 5 other actions, and turns can take forever. Evacuation was not that. I felt like the turns were actually pretty snappy. They were pretty straightforward. Everyone was pretty quick on their turns. We did play it at 4, and the advanced actions, it added some variability to the game that I think would have been missing if we didn't play with these cards. What was interesting was that each action you took gave you some bonus, or not bonus, but some value for your progress track. So there was a progress track, which was kind of indicated by these 2 satellites. They're supposed to be like your 2 supercomputer satellites that you're trying to ship from the new or the old world to the new world. And every action would kind of give you some progress points that you would process at the end of the round. So maybe you take 5 actions, and some of them were 0, some of them are worth 2, some are worth 4, and you add them up at the end of the round, and you're like, okay, I got 10 progress points. And those progress points would be converted to that satellite movement. And then I think this was probably my favorite part of the game, was the satellite movement, because this is where you could significantly hamper other players, because there were some kind of limited bonus spaces on this progress track. So maybe you'd move one satellite to block one space for a player, then you move your other satellite to block another space, but you still needed those benefits. So it was blocking, but also those are things you wanted to have. But this also created tension during your action phase, because you may have an action card that says like, oh, this is the action I want to do, but it gives me 0 progress points. So do I actually want to use this card? Because I kind of need progress points. So even though this is the thing that's important for me, not getting progress points may actually hurt me. So I do think that this created an interesting decision space in the game. Overall though, Evacuation's not my type of game, so it's not a game I would ask to play again. I think it had a really good structure. If you're the type of person that enjoys doing that calculating and that crunching, or reaching the beginning of a round and just trying to say, okay, I need to plan out my next 4 turns, I need to know exactly how many resources I need 2 of these for that, I need 3 of those for this, I need 4 of those for this. So essentially you're going through and saying for each turn, like I know what I'm gonna do for the next 5 turns of the game type of thing. And that's not really a structure that I really like. I don't like that. I'm not a huge fan of kind of that long-term strategic stuff. I really like my games have a little more tactical response in them. Evacuation, it did have some variability, especially with drawing those action cards, because sometimes you draw one that might change your plan a little bit, but it is a very strategic game overall. I would say, just giving you an idea of this game, one of the hardest decisions for me in Evacuation was when I managed to get a free resource of my choice at the beginning of a round. Like, it's just like, okay, there's 3 resources, take one of what you want. And it's like, yes, I get some flexibility, I get to choose what I want now. This is fantastic, I'll be able to kind of plan my round out a little bit more, but then all of a sudden I'm like, crap, I have no idea what I need, and I don't want to spend the time figuring out what my next 4 moves are just to know if I'm going to be short by 1 steal or something. So this is a space where it's that space where AP can kind of become a problem, and I really get frustrated with myself if I get into kind of that space of having that analysis paralysis. So usually I'm just like, I don't want to deal with it. I'm just going to take this resource because it seems the most valuable to me. I just go gut instinct, whatever. And this is a downside for these types of games, because that just means you're probably not going to do as well, right? So for some people, they absolutely love this feeling. They love this type of structure in a game. They love doing those calculations. The person that taught this game, I think that this game is their jam, and showed in the points. Like, I think they scored like 70-some points, whereas the next highest score was 46 points. So huge discrepancy in our scoring. But this is one that, yeah, if you are in that calculating, crunchy, strategic, resource management style of play, then I think Evacuation's great. Like, I think it nails what it's trying to do really well. It is a really well-structured game. It is a smooth game. Like, I was surprised that even though at 4 players, it took us about 3 hours to play, which is really long for a game. I tend to like my games to be hour to an hour and a half. I actually didn't really notice how long it was taking. Like, I remember looking at my watch and be like, wow, it's been an hour and a half already? Like, woof, I did not realize this was taking that long. So it was one that I would say passed faster than it seemed, which is a huge compliment for this weight of a game and this style of game for me. So just sum that up, this is a very crunchy game, very calculating game, but I think it's good for the genre. Like, I think if this is the type of game you like, you should probably check out Evacuation. It's not one that I care to revisit. If my friend wants to play it again, I'll definitely join in, but it's not my go-to choice. All right, let's end with something short and sweet, and this is going to be Iliad. So Iliad is a 2-player game. It is a bit of an abstract puzzle, Achilles versus somebody, Hector versus Achilles, I want to say. So it's one where you're going to have these tiles, and there's kind of like a chessboard in front of you, and on your turn you'll have 2 tiles that you get to choose from, and you just place one of them on the board in one of your squares. And your goal is to win the strength battle in each column and row. So basically the tiles will have values on them, and you'll just add, when a column or row is completed, you'll add up your values, compare them to your opponent's values, and see who has the most power in that row. If there's a tie, the active player wins that row. But that's not the only thing you're trying to do, because essentially you're trying to gain alignment with the various gods, the various Greek gods. And the way this is done is that each row and column actually has 2 tokens, or has a token at each end. So whoever wins like the column or row that you're competing over, they actually get first choice of which token they want. So they could say they get to choose whichever one, then the loser takes the other token. And your goal during the game is not necessarily to win as many columns and rows as possible, it's to actually win the favor of the gods. And you actually want to have a set of the gods. So you can't just win god tokens randomly. You need to have, I believe there's 5 gods in the game, and you need to win a set of the gods. If you don't even win a set of the gods, you aren't even in contention to win, basically. The person that wins at least one set is going to be declared the winner. Then if both players win a set of the gods, then you're going to tally your points. And there's going to be certain values on the god tokens, and then there's some other kind of bonus tokens that you can gain during the game, which will either add or subtract points. There's like plus and minus tokens on the game. And essentially you'll add those up plus the max or the largest god tokens you have, and whoever has the most points wins. This creates kind of a really unique puzzle because of that set collection, because you're looking at those columns and rows and saying, oh, I need to win this one for that god, and I need to win this one here. If I lose this one, then I have to get this one. And so it creates this really cool abstract puzzle. The other thing that's in the game is that a few of the tiles will have some special powers. So there's some that allow you to reposition one of your tiles. There's some that allow you to reposition an opponent's tile. And overall, this creates a really dynamic 2-player game. Now, and then there's another one that allows you to, if you place it and you have one of those god tiles or point tiles, basically, you can take it and exchange it at the maybe Pantheon or something. There's a little reserve off to the side of these tiles that are not on the game board. So you can actually do an exchange and get a tile that maybe you needed, or maybe you can get rid of a negative point tile. So by playing those tiles in the right order, you can kind of help mitigate your score or help achieve that set collection of those gods. Overall, I really enjoyed Iliad. This was a really quick game. It was really easy to learn, and it was just quick to play. We played 2 games back to back, and I think had a good time with both of them. Now, I would say the only downside I saw with this game was potential bad tile draws, because like I said, you have that one tile with the power that can exchange one of those god tiles you got with one from the reserve on the side. But I managed to draw all 3 of mine before I even managed to get a single tile. So basically placing those tiles got me nothing when I did them. So it kind of made it pointless, and then I didn't have that power later in the game, which harmed me a little bit. So the randomness of the draw from your tile bag can cause a bit of an issue during your game, but overall, I thought this was a really cool abstract puzzle. It was a really quick 2-player game, and it created some neat tension with the game with that set collection. So Iliad is just really well designed. I can see why it's getting some attention right now. I'm excited to revisit that one. So yeah, Iliad currently gets my recommendation, but only 2 plays in right now. Tons and tons of great 2-player games though that it's competing with. So we'll see how much playtime it gets in the future. Okay. So that's gonna do it for my hot takes this week. I hope you got something from this. Let me know if you have any questions about these games, or if you played them and maybe have a different opinion on them. I'd be more than happy to hear about those. As always though, thank you for spending your time with me. I definitely appreciate it. And of course, standard YouTube stuff, so please like and subscribe.